Hello guys, today my plan is to ride 600 kilometers as fast as possible, and for this challenge I have picked my local 600 kilometer brevet so I can get a little bit of help from others as well to go as fast as humanly possible. And I knew that one of the fastest Finnish ultra riders was going to be there, so today's speed is going to be spicy. Let's call him the Green Pant guy. Previously my fastest 600 kilometer brevet has been around 25 hours, and last year I managed to do 600 kilometers in under 24 hours with a good tailwind. So my plan was to beat that at least. But really I'm a ambitious guy and I don't believe in easy targets, so in the back of my mind I have the number 21 hours. I just rode 400 kilometers in well under 14 hours a couple of weeks back, so my idea was to replicate that and just add one 7-hour 200k on top of it. So on paper it sounded possible, but in the real world the 14-hour 400k is the easy part, and actually the last 200 kilometers will be where your legs feel like overcooked spaghetti and you start to die inside, especially because that's when the night is going to be. And by the way, I have ridden my first 7-hour 200 kilometers this year, so being able to stack 3 of those right after each other would be unbelievable. In the start I was chatting with the Green Pant guy about the game plan, and unfortunately for me he wanted to do around 22 hours, so I would have to leave him behind at some point. The brevet started at the capital of Finland, in the center of Helsinki, so usually the hardest part is to navigate through the city and trying to at least somewhat follow the traffic laws when everyone is trying to stay in the lead group by running all the red lights. But luckily this time everyone was being surprisingly chill and we were stopping on the traffic lights, and it was Saturday morning so the traffic was chill too, and we made it through the city quite comfortably. Last year when I was following the Green Pant guy during these city sections, my heartbeat didn't fall under 180 much at all, and starting a 24-hour ride like that is pretty much a suicide, so I was pleasantly surprised this time. Last year following him was a horrible decision and my heart ended up giving up in the last few hundred kilometers, after which my heartbeat didn't race over 130 anymore. I have seen in the internet that you should train your muscles to failure, but I'm not quite sure if this is what they mean. Anyways, this time I had a good feeling about this and I knew that we would have a good chance of making some new records. But that feeling quickly disappeared when my indestructible tire started to spray double sealant all over the place. At first I didn't worry at all, because I knew that with these tires I have had 0 punctures and I have ridden some really gnarly stuff in the Transcontinental and Trans-Pyrenees gravel edition, so I was positive that it would seal. But it kept getting looser and looser, and eventually I had to stop and let the lead group go. I started to look for the hole to put a plug in it, but I couldn't find any. I was spinning the wheel around numerous times, furiously trying to find the hole, but I just couldn't find it. So I decided that it most likely is sealed then, and I started to pump some air in. At first it felt like nothing was happening and I was losing hope at this point, but I kept going and eventually the tire started feeling harder. My hand pump is the worst pump in the existence, so I got maybe 2 bars in the tire and I concluded that if the tire didn't lose air faster than I was able to pump it in, it must be sealed. And so in 10 minutes I was on the road again. Now I just have one half loose tire and 10 minutes to catch to the lead group, where they were trading pulls going faster than ever. It was probably half placebo, but my loose tire felt like it was dragging me backwards. Still I was determined to catch the lead group and I started pushing some serious watts. At least one good thing about riding alone is that you are able to keep your effort steady, but still I was burning matches too quickly. I knew that this effort will be rewarded in the end, so I was willing to make the sacrifice. let's talk about the weather. Usually that's the most interesting thing about Finland, and today was a big summer day, aka it was raining. Some great thinker once said, Finnish summer is short but with little snow. So we didn't really have anything to complain about, unless it wouldn't have been sunny for the past week, and suddenly during the one day I would have liked the weather to be at least half decent. It's pouring from the sky. Okay, it was probably a little bit of my fault too when I didn't take a rain jacket with me, but that's also my race strategy. If I don't have a jacket, I don't have a reason to stop every time it starts or stops raining, and I win valuable time against my competition. Okay, but there was a good thing about the weather too, namely we would have a tailwind for the first half of the course, and during the night the wind is supposed to get slower, so when coming back the headwind won't be as strong as the tailwind was. Also the wind was 4 meters per second max, so any direction it's pushing it wouldn't matter too much. After a quite hard effort and 107 kilometers, I make it to the first control point, where unfortunately for me the lead group has already left. That meant I have to keep the stop as short as possible. And so in the 3 minutes I was stationary, I got my card stamped and shoved a bun down my throat, and I was off again. My brake was so fast that I believe I made a couple of minutes to the lead group, and hopefully I would catch them at the next control point. Soon enough I catch one guy and he tells me that the group had scattered and there is one guy a couple of minutes up the road, and the green pant guy would be around 10 minutes ahead. So I had been as fast as the top of the race after my tire incident. So far I hadn't done any progress, but also this told me that the front is moving about as fast as me, so I should be able to catch them during a break, and after that we could start working together again. Next I saw a gas station and it looked like I could get some air to my tires from there, and when I got closer that turned out to be the case. And so after riding 150 kilometers with a half empty tire, I finally got it filled back up again, and wow, my bike felt fast after that. Surprisingly to me, while I was trying to figure out how the compressor worked, the green pant guy himself appeared there. He had taken an extra break at some point, and now he noticed me on the gas station, so we were able to keep going together. And finally I'm really able to get some draft benefit after riding the first 180 kilometers mostly by myself, only to end after a couple of dozen kilometers. There was a construction zone where only one lane was in use, and we had a red light, and there was a car on the other side waiting for its turn, so of course I stop and wait for it. Green pant guy's approach to this situation was different, and he went through with the plan of stepping aside when the car comes, but the car didn't come, and I think it even waited for me to go first. When the car finally started moving, it drove about walking speed for some reason, and I was just there stuck looking green pant guy disappearing into the horizon. Next I get to the second control point at kilometer 225, and so far I have ridden maybe 20 kilometers of that drafting and trading pulse, but also I think I just rode my ever fastest 200k in about 6.5 hours. Alone, breaks concluded. And by the way, you shouldn't be setting new records on shorter distances when you are doing something a couple of times longer than that. So either I'm going to set some reality bending record today, or I'm cooked and soon I'll start seriously slowing down. But now my plan on this stop is to catch the leaders, and first I thought that I would keep the break as short as possible and carry on, but then I noticed that both of the leading guys sat down to eat, so I decided to take a short break to stay with them. But I was too slow. I went to take a pee, and during that they left, so for the sake of my own strategy, this stop was useless for me. I didn't need this break, and the reason I took it got away. At this point I'm thinking that I'm probably going to ride most of this event by myself because I'm not quite fast enough to catch the leaders and they take way longer breaks than I would like. So during some break I will pass them and we wouldn't see again. And now the real boring has started. We have a saying in Finland, it's raining like out of Esther's ass, and this is that situation. There is not a single dry spot on me. If I would jump to a lake with my clothes on, literally nothing would change. Also my frame pack broke on my last race in the Netherlands, so everything I have is wet. Yet I'm not too worried about it. But now after the ride I can tell that I should have been. But the rain is relatively warm, so I'm almost enjoying this moment and definitely not worrying about the future. Next happens something unexpected and I get a glimpse of the leading riders. They had definitely stopped to put a rain jacket on, so I was closing on them and fast. At this point we have ridden about 8 hours, so no one is fresh anymore and I end up catching them very quickly. They were just chilling and chatting and I end up doing the same with them. But our record attempt wasn't going to wait and soon we started trading pulls with the green pant guy, and at this point I realized that riding alone so far had also been a blessing, namely because the amount of water coming from his tires straight to my face felt like I was turning my head up in a shower to face the stream of the water. Also as a heavy mouth breather I got quite a lot of it to my mouth and I didn't know should I drink it or just keep spitting it out. I mean it tasted quite refreshing and on top of that you won't waste time reaching for your own bottles, and even on top of that you most definitely get some nice minerals from the tarmac to keep your fluid balance. So I can't think of a single downside to drinking it. Unfortunately for the upcoming aids I was going to get from the dirty water, the rain stopped and we reached the third control point just 40 kilometers after the last. Here my plan is to keep it super fast and at first that seems to be working, but of course if you have extra clothes that you can change, you are going to change them in the ever changing weather conditions, and that's why I don't do extra clothes. I believe in the long run those couple of minute breaks are going to add up to a significant difference, but you do you. I understand why someone would bring a rain jacket. I have traded quite a lot of comfort for speed, but when I'm unable to utilize that speed, my spent comfort is useless, and that's the ultimately slowest and worst option. So at this moment I'm watching the lead group changing clothes and whatever, and I'm just waiting and waiting, thinking that they won't take too long anymore. I stayed already, so it's not worth it to leave anymore, but in the back of my mind I know I will have to leave them behind at some point if I want to be at the finish before them. But the actual reason why I was so hesitant to leave them behind was the emotional bond I have with them. Depending on how you would define a friend, I think I could call these guys at least my cycling friends. I have ridden a few hundred kilometers with both of them before, so I didn't want to leave my buddies behind. At this point I forget that the 21-hour mark is going to slip away just by losing your focus, and right now the focus is shifting from the plan to human relationships. We finally got going after a 15-minute break that could have been 3 minutes, but also I knew that there would only be 2 stops after this, so I wasn't too worried about the wait yet. And also the average speed had been over 32 kilometers per hour, so with the help of a couple of guys I should be able to at least maintain it for quite some time. So a couple of minutes of extra stop time shouldn't be the end of the world. But now we were in a city trying to manage through it on the best of our abilities. It was a mess. All of us tried to cut the losses by figuring out the fastest way through every intersection. Sometimes we were on a bike path and sometimes on the road with the cars, and all of us made our own decisions trying to balance the safety and speed, which meant that we weren't riding together anymore. Usually one of us was on the road and one was on the right side bike path and one was on the left one. Unfortunately, one guy got unlucky and his path went through a flooded underpass, so he had to turn back to find an alternative route. So we left him behind and kept going with the green pant guy. Then even the green pant guy took a wrong turn and now I was alone again. Even though we had just turned back to the east, we had the tailwind again, although we shouldn't have had. So I was thinking that if the wind has turned to our favor for the night, I don't need any help no more. I was ready to go. But to be real, I was expecting the green pant guy to catch me again, because he really is the fastest guy I personally know on the 600 kilometer distance. And soon enough, after maybe 10 kilometers, he finds me and we start trading pulls in the incomprehensible wind. We were both wondering why was it tailwind again. Unfortunately for my record attempt, it ended up being a fluke in the system, because just after a couple of dozen kilometers it changed back to the expected headwind. Now we are just cruising with the green pant guy to the fourth control point, and now that I have taken a L on 2 out of 3 control points, I'm trying to ask him about the plan for the stop at kilometer 367. I was constantly making math in my head, thinking how fast we were going, and at this point we were about to cross 400 kilometers in well under 14 hours. So we were nicely on pace for the 21-hour 600k. And I was trying to convince the green pant guy that we should try it, but he wasn't too excited about it. I was trying to figure out should I wait there for him or just go straight away, but I didn't really get a clear answer from him how fast was he trying to get back on the saddle. I had registered to this event late, so I had promised that I wouldn't need anything to eat there, so I knew that this was going to be a completely useless stop for me. I just needed the stamp to my brevet card and get going, but the green pant guy wanted to eat there. This is where it all started to go downhill. First, we tried to get into the building where the control point was, but the event organizer was nowhere to be seen. I don't know where we faster than he expected us to be or what, but we were stuck outside. Luckily for us, he had left his phone number on the door, so we were able to call him. But when I called the number, a phone started to ring inside on a table, so we were stuck outside. Nice. Then some complete outsider came and opened the door for us, even though they probably shouldn't have let some complete stinky strangers inside a private property. But for us that was a huge blessing. Then I start to look for a stamp to get going, and the green pant guy starts eating and charging his stuff, and you know whatever people do on their breaks. But next a new problem arises. We don't have a stamp. I keep looking and found a stamp, but still I don't have a stamp pad. Luckily there is some ink left on the stamp from previous use and I'm able to stamp my card. Next I'm telling the green pant guy that I'm about to go, then he tells me that he won't take too long anymore and this break could really benefit me as well. So I'm like, okay, maybe I should try to charge my phone and headphones so I can wait for him a little bit longer. My phone and headphones are soaking wet, also my power bank is wet, so every port and every cable I had were wet, which meant I couldn't charge anything. Next the event organizer appears and he starts to help me to get my pots dry, but we didn't really have any equipment to do it. My phone wasn't essential to get to the finish, so I wasn't too worried about it, but I knew that it was going to be a long night without listening to anything, so I would have really wanted to get it dry to stay motivated throughout the darkness. While I was trying to dry my phone and power bank, the green pant guy splashes water straight on them from his bottle and just says, "Oops, it was open." At that time I was really getting irritated and I was about to crash out. Also, I was convinced that he did it on purpose to slow me down so he could stay on my pace. But now, without the emotional pressure, I don't know was it by accident or not. At least it's definitely a suspicious accident to pour the water straight on my phone. But I tried to keep it cool and ignore it because I knew that I was in a really emotional headspace at that moment and crashing out definitely wouldn't speed things up. Also at this moment I had already kinda given up on the thought of me getting them dry, so that incident probably didn't change anything. Okay, I'll keep going without my phone. So now I'm asking the green pant guy again, how long is it going to take? And he answers me 5 minutes. As a rule of thumb, what I've learned in the short time I've been in this world, when someone says 5 minutes and you are ignorant enough to believe them, you are really stupid. And unfortunately, most people learn that the hard way, and today was my time to learn. That 5 minutes was 20 minutes, and I was an idiot for believing that it would have been anywhere near 5. Finally, we got going after a 40-minute break, where the only thing I got was a stamp on my card, and to be completely honest with you, I was really frustrated, so a good place to use that frustration was to dig deep on the front, and so I ended up starting a little bit too fast. Also, right after the control point there was a couple of kilometers of gravel, so when it's wet you don't want to be behind someone else's wheel or you end up looking like a swamp monster. Okay, hopefully I didn't make this sound like we have some crazy beef with the green pant guy. I have to make this clear, we are cool and he's a really nice guy. Our trouble came from trying to combine two very different fueling strategies, and here after almost 400 kilometers of riding, if you want to acknowledge it or not, you are getting tired. So we had a small communication error. As an ultra cyclist, I'm more of a slow burner. I ride moderate speed, but I don't do any stops, and the green pant guy rides fast and then takes a couple of breaks here and there, and sometimes those are hard to combine. Also, I had most of the stuff I was going to eat from the start of the ride on me, like this top tube bag is 1.5 liters and only for food, so I was constantly eating. And the green pant guy only had the stuff he would eat between each control point. Our long break meant that 21 hours is buried now. As much as I would have wanted it to be the new record, even with my delusional picture of the reality, that's just not possible anymore. Our direction turned to the south, which introduced some new headwinds, and our speed started slowly to decay. On the bigger roads we were drafting, but when we were able to ride side by side we mostly did that. Sometimes we were chatting, but mostly we were just barely surviving. Next we reached the 5th control at kilometer 430, where things got even worse. Mostly it was a standard, quite efficient break, but the weather had started to do its job. Namely, next most of the buttons on my Garmin died completely. I tried to restart it and everything, but it was clear my Garmin had taken some water damage. And let me tell you, I have managed to break 3 Garmins on the last 1.5 years, so it's not about me being unlucky anymore. It can't be, but the next bike computer is most definitely going to be a Wahoo. Our bad luck didn't end yet though, because even green pant guy's trusted front light died, so now we were riding on his Garmin and on my light. For me this meant that I was completely dependent on him. If I would lose him for whatever reason, I would also have to stop and wait a couple of hours for the next rider to come by, because I didn't have any way of knowing where I was supposed to go anymore. My Garmin was dead, but so was my phone, and I wasn't able to charge it. I was completely off grid. I think that would have been a very interesting situation if I would have had to stop on the side of the road, sitting there in the middle of the night in the cold. I could have slept, but I didn't have any sleeping gear, and the night was cold enough, so I wouldn't have been able to sleep without any. I would have just sat there for an indefinite period of time, staring at the road. It could have been 3 hours, maybe 5. I wouldn't have had anything to do. No phone, no nothing. But luckily for me, the green pant guy didn't sprint away on a random uphill, and we kept going together. But still, the worst thing about losing your bike computer in the social media driven world is that if it's not in Strava, it didn't happen. So you have to take the rest of the story with a grain of salt, because I don't have anything to prove it even happened. We kept riding and the night was getting darker, slowly but surely, and the darker it got, the slower our speed felt. I didn't have any idea how slow we actually were, but whenever there was a sign with the distance to the next city, it felt like we were moving walking speed. Like we were approaching the city 5 kilometers an hour. There was like 43 kilometers to the next city, and after what felt like 10 minutes it was 42. I usually like to check the distance, speed and clock constantly and make these little calculations in my head about my schedule and stuff, but now I couldn't do that anymore, so I was losing the sense of time. On every uphill the bike felt heavier than ever before. Despite the never-ending grind, we somehow make it to the next city, where the Green Band guy had planned a stop. There was supposed to be a 24-hour gas station, and now the Green Band guy is asking me, do I want to take a break? Now I don't care anymore. My plan of making it in under 21 hours is lost, so I have to trust his plan. Also, now I was completely dependent on him, because I didn't have any way of knowing where to go, so I agreed to take the stop, and I was getting a little bit tired, so the thought of taking an extra break didn't sound too bad anymore. Unfortunately for us, there was no 24-hour gas station. For me, this wasn't an issue. I hadn't planned to rest here, but I don't know if you remember, but Green Band guy's race plan is to take food for only the gap between each stop. This meant that he had food only until this 24-hour gas station and nothing after it, and it's the middle of the night, so the next place where we could get something to eat is over 100 kilometers away. I've been in this situation before, when you are in the middle of a race and you have planned a grocery store stop for the evening, and for some reason it's not open anymore when you arrive. That's pretty much the worst thing that could happen in a ultra race, because when your body runs out of fuel, you stop, no questions asked, and depending on the situation you might have to wait for 10 hours to get anything to eat. A couple of dozen kilometers after our supposed stop, he tells me this and that he's going to get cooked soon, which means that we both are going to get cooked. Luckily for us, I don't just carry spare snacks, but spare snacks, so I was able to get him out of the inevitable bunk. In these kinds of situations, it's really nice to have a lot of food with you, but mostly I carry the same chocolate bars across continents that I'm not going to eat until it's a question of life or death. Having so much spare food definitely slows me down, so I've been thinking how could I reduce the amount of food I carry and just eat it all before I buy new stuff. But I guess I've been traumatized by running out of food before, so nowadays I have to be extra careful that it doesn't happen again. And one good thing about this situation is that now I was able to give him the obnoxious chocolate bars that have been in more countries than I'm able to count, and he was even happy to take them, so I haven't been carrying them for nothing. After our supposed break starts a long road, namely the Green Band guy tells me that we won't be turning away from this road for the next 60 kilometers, and this road is going to be hilly, constantly going up and down. And he was right. For the next very long time I had zero stimulus. There was literally nothing there. Maybe 2 cars passed us on the road, and my TikTok brain was getting fried from the boredom. There I thought that maybe when you get bored enough, your imagination would start to hallucinate, but even that didn't happen. I was hoping that my imagination would find me something to think about, but I had already thought about everything all day, so my mind was just blank. The only 2 thoughts I had were, when is the next turn going to be, and when are we going to finish? And unfortunately a watched pot never boils, so this was going to take forever, and that's how it felt too. But the clever thing about ultras are that many times the easiest way out of the situation is to just keep going. And so the next intersection got closer kilometer by kilometer. The hills were brutal. I was starting to get dropped on them, but luckily I was able to catch the green pant guy every time, or maybe he was waiting for me on the top. My legs felt really weak at this point and going up the hills was really slow, so it would be interesting to see my power numbers. Because if I'd have to guess, I would say my power maxed out at 200 watts on these hills. That's how weak I felt. When my raw average power before my Garmin died was 203 watts. Finally, after what felt like 8 hours, we reached the intersection, and after that I knew that the rest of the journey is going to be shorter than that singular road. And we would be turning every few kilometers, and soon we were going to be back in a city, so I was relieved that it's almost over and the landscapes were going to get way more interesting. So mentally this is where I won, and that thought made the rest of the journey way easier. At this point I have no idea what time it is, so I don't know how well we managed the night. I only know that the sun was going to rise somewhere around 4 in the morning, so it would be quite bright after 3 or something. But truly the last few hours had been so slow that I'm hoping that we were at least in the 24-hour pace. But I had no idea, we also could have been inside 22 hours. When riding with a friend, the Finnish summer nights are so nice because you only have a couple of hours of darkness, so you won't feel as tired as with longer nights. But when riding alone, cycling through a Finnish summer night is the loneliest thing I know. Because after 4 in the morning it's so sunny outside that you could believe it's the middle of the day. And in the countryside you won't be seeing anyone outside before 8, so you have 4 hours when you are completely alone, not seeing a soul, and your brain thinks that there should be people because it looks like it's the middle of the day. That feels like you are the only person in the entire world, and thinking that everyone has suddenly disappeared from this universe makes you very lonely. Okay, now we have reached the city. We are getting so close that it's hard to imagine not to finish anymore. But there is still one thing between me and the finish line. Namely, I start to get the first little signs of a bonk just 20 kilometers before the finish. And I know that now I have to act fast, or these last few kilometers are going to be the hardest of the whole challenge. But I have only been eating candy and sugar water for the last 20 plus hours, so trying to eat anything sweet might lead to throwing up. I'm usually not a big fan of salty licorice, but this time I luckily had some on me, and I started to shove every piece I could find down my throat, and wow, it tasted really good after only eating straight sugar for the past day. Then the green pant guy started to get away a little bit, and on the uphills I have no chance of keeping up with the arising bonk. Now he's making turns and then he disappears behind buildings. I know that I can't let him go because still I don't have any way of knowing where to go without him, and if he leaves I probably have to wait for the next rider to catch me, and that's going to take hours. So I'm trying to sprint up these hills, but with 600 kilometers on my legs and bonk hitting hard, I'm not really able to keep up. Finally, the salty licorice hits in and I'm able to catch him. If I would have gotten out of the bonk one uphill later, he would have disappeared and I wouldn't have known where to go. In the Sunday morning, the city is nice and quiet, so we were able to make to the finish without any new problems. And our final time was just a couple of minutes under 23 hours for the 609 kilometer course. I would have wanted it to be faster, but it's still a personal best, so I can't complain too much about it. Unfortunately, to have a perfect run, everything needs to be perfect, and with this long of a challenge, everything will not be perfect. I think this last clip summarizes how I was feeling after this challenge perfectly. Thank you for watching, like and subscribe, and I try to ride 1000 kilometers as fast as possible.